Hey guys, today we're going to be taking a look at another piece of gear, and at the risk of being accused of making quite possibly the weirdest flex I've ever made on this channel, this is by far one of the rarest and most obscure pieces of equipment that I own. What you're looking at is quite potentially the great-grandfather of all vests and plate carrier systems that use a detachable modular placard system, and I'll get into why that is in a moment, but what you're looking at here is the AWS Covert Modular Vest, sometimes called the CQB chest rig. Now there's about a billion different ways that I would describe this thing, but covert is not one of them. This thing is massive, it's bulky, it's ungainly, but yet it has a few features that kind of stuck throughout the course of history and influenced gear development as we know it today. So a bit of the backstory on this, I'll try to condense it because there is a lengthy history to it, but not as lengthy as, say, the AWS Strike Vest. But much like the Strike Vest, this thing was actually designed by sew shops and rigger shops working for Delta Force, and it was a culmination of various inputs that the operator gave them, and basically they told them what they wanted and they came out with this idea. This is not one of the original rigger made strike vests. This is one that was actually made by AWS, because this came into the period where AWS started making tactical gear, and there was a bit of an overlap between the designs that riggers, sew shops made and stuff that AWS picked out and started mass producing. So there was an earlier version of this vest that had a few defining features that kind of showed it as an earlier vest, like it had white thread and brass grommets, but these later ones from the mid-1990s would have had all black hardware, black thread, but I'll get into that more in depth in a moment. So, because I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, the Covert Modular Vest was designed sometime around the late 80s, I want to say 1988 or so. That's at least the earliest that I see buckle dates on these, and really they weren't a very popular chest rig used by Delta Force. It was sort of the counterpart to the Strike Vest in a way, because you had C Squadron who used the Strike Vest, and then you had A Squadron who used this thing and another vest called the Bonus Strike Vest, which I'll probably make another video on in the future. But again, getting ahead of myself, the only times I really see this thing used in its full configuration is a couple photos from a 1989 training session in the Yuma Desert, and then there's one photograph from Scud Hunters during the Gulf War, where one Delta operator can be seen wearing one, and then the only other photo is taken from a training session in 1992, where I believe Samuel Foster can be seen wearing one in this photo here. But that's really the only time that these vests can be seen used by Delta, because what was much more popular with this design was the fact that it had several detachable center panels here. As you can see, I have this MP5 magazine panel attached, and this would peel up with Velcro, and you could replace it with a number of other different placards, which I'll get more into detail with in a moment here. So again, these were developed around 1988 or so, and these were used right around until 1992. You stopped really seeing them after that, but the panels themselves persisted for quite a long time in A Squadron. You could, especially these pistol holster panels, which you could see used as late as 2004, potentially even later, as I've said before. So very influential design. The panels were very popular on their own, as I've said, to be put onto body armor, and really influenced the scope of the concept of having a quickly detachable placard system that you could swap out on a plate carrier, and it's really the forerunner of all modern swift clip systems, as I've said before. So let's talk a bit about the actual rig itself, because I've never really seen anyone break this design down, so let's go ahead into it. So the original ones from 1988 or so were a little bit different, as I said. The grommets were smaller and were bare brass, and they had white thread typically. The Velcro sometimes differed. It was like sort of a bluish green Velcro, whereas this is black. I think that's mostly just due to the age of the materials and what they had available at the time in rigger shops, whereas when AWS picked up the design in around 1994 or so, they began producing it like this. There was just subtle differences in the construction, but on the whole, the only real major difference in the construction between the 1988 and the 1994 pattern is these pockets right here. So you can obviously, there's a plethora of pockets on this thing, aside from the detachable panel in the center. So starting from the left, you have a small pocket here, which would be either for a mini mag light or a Surefire 6P or 660, whatever handheld flashlight they wanted to use. Here we have a flashbang pocket, I believe, and on the 1988 pattern, these would have been fragmentation grenade pockets, whereas the later patterns are flashbangs for whatever reason. Here you have a single MP5 magazine pouch. It could be used as a slap charge pouch, but it is an MP5 magazine pouch for whatever reason. You have a pistol mag pouch up here, and moving over to the other side, you have two more pistol mag pouches, and these would each hold about two single stack 1911 pistol mags. So in total, you have about, including this one, and this one, you have about like 16 1911 mags on, or excuse me, 8 1911 mags on this vest as it is. Then here is one of the more interesting features. These are also flashbang pockets, but all of them have these large grommets here in the middle of them. And what this is for is you would have the flashbangs in these pouches here, and then there would be a bit of paracord or some similar cord running through these grommets, and so that when you reached and removed one of the flashbangs, the cord would be held captive to the vest itself, and it would pull the pin on the flashbang as you removed it from the pocket. It's quite an interesting design that I don't really see on a lot of different vests, but that was kind of an innovative feature, and it's definitely very interesting, but not much else to be said about that. This long strip on the bottom here is actually for a slap charge, like a long strip of plastic explosive that you would place on a door or something similar, so you could breach it open, in case anyone didn't know what a slap charge was. And it is removable. You have a strip of 4088 webbing, I believe it's type 8 webbing here, that you could just peel up, and this entire slap charge pouch is removable. You have the pocket here to access it. You could probably also store flex cuffs in this thing, but I'm not entirely for certain. And then over here, you can see the flap where you would access the other side of the grommets for tying the cable, and then the other grommet is hidden underneath the slap charge Velcro. You have the two tabs up here, which would allow you to release the panel if you wanted to change it out. Like, say I have the quadruple MP5 mag panel on here, and you can see that it would attach with these loop lock rings at the very top, and that is why on the TG Faust NATO Special Forces body armor that Delta used, that's why it has those loops at the top. A lot of people will say that they use those to attach strike vests, and that's not actually true. There's only one potential photo that documented that being done. For the most part, those loops were there for the AWS Covert Modular vest, or more specifically, its panels, because the spacing would correspond with these loops, and that is the whole reason I mentioned Swift Clip and placard systems, is because I've said that's why these panels are more popular, is because Delta loved putting them on their body armor. So, like I said, you can change that out with, say, the pistol panel here. And I'll get more into detail with the panels momentarily. I just want to finish talking about the base vest itself. And as you can see, you could just slap it on there and then Velcro it up. And that's as simple as it is. It's a dead simple system, and honestly, they should probably return to something like this. It's not as positive a securement as, say, like a Swift Clip placard, but it's definitely a lot lower profile, and it's a lot easier to work, in my opinion. It's just simple, and it's just a good design. So, putting that aside for now, I'll get to the panels in a minute, like I said. So you can see the big Velcro field on the front of the vest where all the panels would go, and moving to the back here. Again, this is all made of 1000 denier Cordura with 4088 webbing. The 1-inch webbing is actually 17337, which is interesting because this is during the period where 5038 Type 4 webbing would be more commonly used in its place. So very interesting to see 17337 webbing used at this period. My particular example, at least going off of the buckle dates, is dated 1997. The buckle dates are very important with older gear like this because there are no tags or indicating dates or stamps, or in most cases. This is one of those items that's made by AWS before they started putting tags on things, and so it's one of those items that their PR department doesn't really acknowledge because they can't really positively identify it as one of their production items. So it's a bit unfortunate. I would really love to see AWS acknowledge some of their older gear, but they're more focused on their more modern products like the SMU belts and their they're LBT knockoffs. It's funny. AWS used to be cloned by like LBT used to clone AWS. What happened, guys? Anyways, getting off track here. So. Yeah, like I said, 1000 denier Cordura, very good material, can't go wrong with it. The slab charge pouch itself is interesting because it's made entirely out of 4088 Type 8B webbing, I believe. It's some variant of Type 8 where it's 3 inches wide. It's actually a webbing, so it's not. This isn't actually fabric here. Kind of curious to point that out. But anyways, like I was saying, buckle dates are important because there's no tags, and you really have no other way of indicating when these items were made, other than by looking at the little roundel clocks on the buckles, and you can see this one says 96, whereas the 2-inch buckle for the waist strap says 1997. So I would put this more around 1997 as a date of manufacture. I apologize that the camera's not picking up on those quite well, but they we'll try to get to focus. I don't know if you can see that, but there's definitely a 1997 there. And the waist strap is pretty non-intuitive. It's just a beautiful length of 4088 Type 7 webbing. This is probably my favorite webbing ever. It's such a beautiful color, especially in this black color here with the yellow trim. It really pops, and it's just perfect. Just little details like that just makes older gear like this so much more aesthetic than the modern stuff, in my opinion. And going to the shoulder straps, these are mostly comprised of 4088 Type 8 webbing, and then they taper down into the 17337, and you have some ladder lock buckles for adjustment, and they're non-detachable at the sides here, and they do have the Nexus SR1 buckles at the top for removing if you really wanted to. Not sure why you would, I guess it would really only be there for quickly removing the vest, more so than clipping it into anything as you would with a Swift clip system. This is obviously before Swift clips, so you wouldn't really do that anyway. So that's really the majority of the base vest itself. There isn't any other secrets or anything that I haven't shown off. Maybe there's little bits of elastic here and there on the pouches, but overall it's pretty non-intuitive once you break down the individual pouches. And there weren't really any other configurations of these pouches other than the 88 patterns that had frag grenade pouches instead of flashbangs right here. But yeah, very cool vest. I'm definitely sad that there's not more of these around. In fact, I think I may be one of the only people in the United States that owns one of these. All the rest of them that I know of are either in Japan, Hong Kong, or Italy, because collectors over there are more keen to notice the stuff that U.S. Special Forces used well before anyone in the U.S. got an interest to it, and they tended to buy it up while it was kind of cheap back in the day. So a bit unfortunate that the stuff's so hard to find, but I'm very, very lucky to own one of these, and I'm very happy to show it off for you guys. So let's move on to the panels themselves, because that's really where most of the meat is with this this review. So one of the main ones here is this double M16 mag pouch, or Stanag mag. This is interesting because this actually holds 6 M16/M4 mags in groups of 3 in each of these 2 pouches. And this is one of the 2 pouches that I would see Delta using quite a bit in period photographs. They really loved these ones, as well as the pistol panels. So that's one of the pouches, and as you can see, there's the loop locks at the top there, and on the back of all of them, there's hook Velcro, obviously for interfacing with the chest rig itself. Nothing much to be said about it. See, it's neat how there's 2 snaps here. I'm not sure if these were intended for any other magazines. I would have to assume so, given the the fact that there's some variance of adjustment here, but I don't really know what other magazines this would be capable of carrying other than 6 M16 mags. So moving on from that, we have the MP5 magazine panel, which you already saw. This would hold obviously 4 MP5 magazines. Nothing to see on the back. It's just, a basic MP5 mag pouch. Holds 4 MP5 magazines. There's bits of elastic for extra retention. Nothing much to be said about that. It's kind of cool. I've seen at least one photograph of Delta using those around 1993 to 1995 or so. There's the pistol panel, which is probably where I'm going to have the most discussion. So you have 2 more double pistol mag pouches on either side. You have a SR1 buckle here for positive retention of the sidearm. And this is a pretty universal holster. These are mostly intended for 1911s, but these could probably hold just about any semi-automatic pistol that kind of has a similar profile. You have a single dot fastener with for the retention hood. It's kind of difficult to work. I would assume most people would just leave this unsnapped. It's kind of awkward to it doesn't really work that well as a thumb brake, so it's kind of pointless. And you can see the adjustment strap here, or the adjustment field, where you could adjust the height of this this loop, and depending on what pistol you're running in with it. And this is one of the other items that changed it a little bit between the 1988 and the 1994 pattern. The earlier ones had a more rounded profile, whereas the later ones, like this one, are kind of more angular at the corners. And then the only other main difference, other than the obviously there would be smaller brass grommets instead of these size 0 black oxide grommets. The Velcro would also be sort of that bluish greenish color, and then the this flap here would actually open from the side. It would open along this seam instead of folding down, so it would fold out this way instead of down. That's the only other difference, kind of a minute detail, but it's one thing to look out for. And then the final panel that I have here is sort of a hybrid. It's kind of interesting. I'm not sure who would really benefit from this, but you have a single triple M16 mag pouch in the center here, and then on either side of it you have 2 single MP5 mag pouches. So I'm not sure who would be running an M16 or a Car 15, any sort of AR variant and an MP5 at the same time. Maybe these could be used to hold slap charges. I don't know. Maybe there's some other utility that the MP5 mags could also hold slap charge pouches. I could see it. They made slap charges in all different sizes, and some of them were pretty small, so I could definitely see these MP5 mags being used for that. So that's one potential use, but as far as I know, these are mainly just kind of a weird hybrid M16 and MP5 mag pouch or panel. So that's all there is to be said about that. Just very interesting vest design. Very glad to show it off for you guys. I don't think we're going to see another one of these on YouTube anytime soon. So yeah, very, very happy to own this piece. And there's really not much else to be said about it. It's just a cool design, and I really think that modern gear design owes a lot to this thing in terms of modular replaceable panels. There may have been some other solutions available previously. I'm not sure when the LAPD style snap grid vests made by ABA and Second Chance and Safariland, etc. I don't know when those were introduced. I think those are more of a later 80s, early 90s type of thing. I could be wrong, but I think that this thing actually predates that by a little bit. But anywho, that's really all there is to be said, as I've said several times by now, so I'll go ahead and wrap up my rambling. If you have any further questions on this thing, feel free, as always, to drop them down in the comments below. I'm more than happy to share information on this thing, and I will see you all later with the next gear review.